Welcome to the Lights Lounge, your weekly home for all things Las Vegas Lights FC. We'll be here every single week in 2025. As usual, you can join us here for a deeper dive into everything that happens on the pitch, including match previews and analysis, alongside a new guest every single episode. Coming up, the Lights are looking to bounce back after a tough road loss at Sacramento Republic with a home match at Cashman against El Paso Locomotive. Alongside me today to chat about how the team moves forward with a crucial Western Conference match on Saturday, I have USL veteran Younes Boudadi. Younes, welcome to the lounge.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I think once you have over 100 appearances, we get to call you a veteran. Yeah. Do you agree with that? Is 100 appearances like the veteran line?
I'm not sure. I feel like this year was kind of the first year that that name has kind of been put under my name. Yeah. Maybe too, I think that the team here is a little bit younger. Mm-hmm. So I would say definitely compared to the guys in the locker room, I've played substantially more games. So it's also the first year that I feel like, when you go through your career in the first few years, you're trying to make a name for yourself. You're trying to get a lot of games in. And this is the first year where I start to feel that I can put the message that I've learned over those years onto players that are starting to break out in the league, which is a good feeling. You see guys that are in similar positions that you were in a few years ago. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely a good feeling that you're able to start to be able to put on those messages to players that are coming in the league for sure. Yeah,
I think that's cool. I think we had a conversation with Val about him stepping into the captain role, and he's sort of in the same space where he's sort of stepping into that veteran role. We talked with Joe Zhao, and he's like the only father and 32-year-old on the team, and a team full of 20-somethings. So it's an interesting dynamic the team has this year. Let's jump straight into it, and we'll start at the tough place. We'll start with the Sacramento game, which was a 5-0 loss. Obviously, you didn't play in that game. You were on the bench. Mm-hmm. What did you see from the sideline? What do you feel like went wrong in that game, and what can be corrected going forward?
Yeah, I think if you talk about the experience, the USL is a very unique league. In a way that it's a long season with no breaks. Every game is tough. You have different climates, different environments, travel. But I think where I kind of went wrong in this game is, you go on a kind of a little streak of unbeaten run. And when that happens, it's human nature that we maybe get complacent in certain aspects. And I think where we were a little bit complacent this weekend was the energy that we came out with. Maybe not a lot of guys have played away at Sacramento, but it's a tough away game. It's a place where you maybe needed those extra 20% that on top of the 100% that you give. And I think maybe that was a little bit lacking, like the intensity, the mentality, winning, scrapping for every ball. But look, it's early in the season, and it's the beauty of having a long season. It's a process. So we're definitely looking to address that this weekend and change that aspect of the game. Yeah, absolutely.
I think Sacramento had a great environment, great attendance. They've a lot of energy, and as they're scoring a bunch of goals, I was there as well with the team, and it is a challenging place to play, and have to go back there for Jägermeister Cup again at the end of the month, which I think is probably a good opportunity, is the way to frame it, right? Like, you lose a game like that on the road that you feel like doesn't represent who you are as a team, and you have an immediate chance to go back to that same exact place and kind of put it right. So
it's exciting. I'd rather do that than not playing them again away all year, because you don't really have a feeling that you can get the record straight. It's exciting that we can go there again in 2 weeks and fight for a better performance and a better result.
Yeah, I know for that game you were in the mix to be starting, but maybe picked up a little bit of a niggle in the middle of the week. And then kind of maybe had to back out of the game. Talk me through just what that process is like. And I guess, one, are you feeling good now and ready to jump into El Paso? And then two, kind of what is that process like? Just take us behind the scenes for someone that doesn't know how a team works, as you have a conversation with Stephanie, our athletic trainer, with Antonio, the head coach, as you're debating about whether it's worth playing in the game. Is it worth the injury risk that you're currently under? Just talk me through that.
So it happened on Tuesday in training. I've just felt a little bit of a tweak in my hamstring. I knew it wasn't nothing too serious where I would have to be sidelined for weeks, but it definitely needed attention for a few days. So Wednesday, Thursday, I kind of went through a process of trying to heal it, trying to get treatment, and then train those 2 days. And then Friday was kind of a match day -1 session, so it's not really the best day to properly test out if it's 100% or not. I felt pretty good on Saturday going in, and had a plan to play more minutes. Obviously, I didn't play, but then I think Antonio made the right decision to pull me out. I think if you have a small hamstring injury like that, it's better to sacrifice one game than going in and maybe getting hurt for the next 5-6 weeks.
Right.
You know, it's a season where everyone's going to be needed. So it's good to give guys minutes that maybe didn't play too much the week before that. Giving guys a chance to show themselves. So yeah, I think it was a smart decision overall. You know, obviously you want to be out there, you want to compete. So in that aspect, it hurt that you can't help the team. But I think in the long run, it was the right decision. It's a little bit gambling sometimes. I feel maybe if it was a final, you know, or a semi-final, and situations like that, you try to push a little bit more. But when you're still in the mix in season and it's still pretty early on, I think it's the right decision to, you know, to maybe wait 1 week until you're maybe back to full 100%.
Yeah, especially with 3 games in a week coming up, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday. 2 of those are at home, which helps, but you're going to need the whole roster at that point. And you don't want to be, if you play in that game and then you pull your hamstring and do it worse, then you're missing 3 games immediately for sure, because you're just going to take a longer time. So interesting there. As you're kind of looking at it, and the team's attacking training this week and looking to improve things, I think obviously for a lot of fans, the attack is a big question mark. I think the defense has done an incredible job, lots of shutouts, Rico's playing great, the defenders are playing great regardless of who's in there, and obviously that's an entire team effort. So for you and your role as either a right back in a back 4 or a right wing back in a back 5, what is your role offensively to create high danger moments and create good opportunities for the team?
Yeah, I think it's not always the right way to, you know, if you're getting shutouts, to look at, oh, the back line did great.
Exactly.
If you don't score, it's not always right to just look at the strikers are not scoring. It's always a full team effort. You know, I mean, personally as a player, I like to, you know, contribute in the final third. I feel like in that aspect, I still have the more to give to the team. So I like to overlap a lot. I like to be involved in the final third, but I think if you have the foundation already that, you know, obviously we conceded a lot of goals last weekend, but if you have the overall foundation over the last few months that defensively we're solid, I think now it's time to really focus on, you know, getting the whole team involved and creating more high-level chances. That's not just strikers, it's not just the midfielders, it's just everyone. Creating those connections, I think we're still kind of going through a phase where it's a lot of new players and people trying to find their footing with each other. And I think, you know, from the last years, what I've seen in teams that have a lot of turnover, that takes a few months. You know, it might be until the middle of the summer until you really get in full stride and start scoring. And sometimes it's maybe one game that you need 4 or 5 goals, 3 goals to kind of open the gates, you know, like, so that first feeling of, okay, we don't score that much, that feeling is gone. And then it's almost you're playing more free. So I think we need to be patient as a team, not get too agitated with the fact that, you know, maybe we haven't been scoring too much. It'll come. You know, we have enough quality in the team to create chances to score goals. So I'm more than confident that, you know, one of these games, hopefully Saturday, that will change, and then we kind of get into a rhythm of maybe offensively scoring a little bit more. Yeah.
You know, we saw Jack Gurr, the right wing back for Sacramento. He got himself a goal against us on Saturday. So maybe you pop in there with a goal at some point this season. I don't think you have a goal in the USL Championship, do you?
I've prided myself in creating a lot of chances. I think over the last 5-6 years, I've amassed a good amount of assists, a lot of chances created, but I'm still waiting on that goal. So, you know, it's something that's on my mind, but also not fully on my mind. It's not something that, you know, in my position is naturally that you're going to score 10 goals, but obviously it's nice to help the team with a goal here and there.
Well, we'll be looking out for it because you've got 133 professional appearances, there's still no goals, so it'll be pretty cool when it happens.
Maybe
and hopefully
you just spoke it into existence.
Yeah, this weekend against El Paso. So with El Paso, you know, kind of another early season 6-pointer here. We talk about 6-pointers a lot at the end of the year when playoff positions, but at the beginning of the year, it's the same. The math is the same. They're currently in 4th with 16 points. We're in 8th with just 12 points, but we have a game in hand on pretty much everyone, a lot of the teams above us in the table. So the margins are still razor thin. Like, we win the game in hand and we're only 1 point back from 3rd. So talk me through the El Paso game here and the importance being placed on it.
Well, it's a good team. You know, offensively they're very strong. They score a lot of goals, but they're also conceding a good amount of goals. So I feel like they're playing an exciting type of football for fans. I would say they're really strong on the counterattack. But I think the important thing is at home you have to at least get one, but you know, you have to try to win the home games, especially against Western Conference teams, because, you know, when playoffs come around, getting a home field advantage is huge, and those games, especially against Western Conference teams, just have a little bit more importance to it. You know, those are the games that you want to win, because they lose 3 points, we get 3. Whereas if you play against an Eastern Conference team, you know, you don't really take 3 points away from someone in your conference. So I think I agree. We need to put definitely emphasis on the games that we have against teams that know at the end of the year will be around us to play for those top 4 spots, and not be too complacent that it's still early in the season, and then just grab those points. And at the end of the year, I feel like it happens a lot when you just fall out the playoffs, or you just fall out of a home playoff game that you think back of like, oh, this game and this game and this game, if you got that extra goal. So I think it's good to be proactive and be really aggressive in those games against Western Conference teams.
Yeah, I think we saw that last year. Obviously, you were with Hartford at the end of the year last year, but with the Lights snuck in as the 4th seed. So got that first round of game against Sacramento and beat Sacramento in penalties. And if it's flipped, just 1 point different, that game at Sacramento, as we saw with a great environment, the game feels a lot different versus playing at home in front of a good crowd at Cashman. And those margins are thin, and it could come down to a game like this for a team competing for those spots. We're a little later in the week. We usually record the pod a little bit earlier. So have you guys looked at El Paso? I mean, you spoke about them being strong in the counterattack. Is that something that Antonio and the coaching staff has emphasized to look out for, or what's a key to the match for you without giving away state secrets?
Yeah, well, the staff obviously has done a great job, in my opinion, every game to really look at the opponent and what their strengths are. It's kind of finding a balance of not getting away from what you were trying to do as a team, but also being aware of what they're trying to do. And most of their goals, or a lot of the goals that they've scored, is counter-attacking football. They're very good in front. They have a lot of talent there. So I think the focus will be, if we are getting up there, that we're not giving away too much in the back, that we're staying in a good organization. So we try to limit the counterattacks that they have, being solid defensively, and then just taking chances, being a little bit more proactive going forward. They've been conceding goals, so I think it's a chance for us to break that seal a little bit, get those goals, and then just defensively be really focused on counterattacks and try to stop attacks early before they end up on top of our box.
Just talking about soccer tactics in general, I like to dive into this stuff with you guys kind of beyond the basic stuff. We talked about it earlier. Okay, we can't just look at the defenders for shutouts and just the attackers for goals. As you're talking about eliminating the potential for counterattacks, talk to me about the concept of kind of that proactive defending, right? Like when you're on the ball, you have possession, you can already be thinking about, okay, if the ball turns over, where's the winger? If you're a center back, like am I going to step in, or am I going to step back? Talk to me about what that looks like at the more subtle part of the game.
Like I'll kind of talk about, me personally as an outside back, wing back. If you have two wing backs or two outside backs in a team that like to go forward and like to attack, it's important that you don't do it at the same time. You don't want to leave your center backs alone against 2 or 3 strikers from them. So I think it's important to just find balance in the team. If you feel like the attack is going through our left side, I think the responsibility for the right side and the center part of the field and our defense is to just arrange, if we lose the ball, look at where the outlets are for them. If we lose the ball, trying to be balanced and keep at least 3 guys in the back without both going forward. So just small tweaks like that, where you can kind of nip attacks from them early, instead of having to run 60 yards back because you're not balanced, and then try to defend your own box, which is obviously a lot harder.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think your season as an individual has been pretty good as we kind of move into your story. But I want to talk about how you evaluate your season later on, because I think the context of your career that's brought you here will serve as an interesting kind of backdrop and framework for that. So let's go all the way back to the beginning. Born in Belgium, but represented Morocco with the youth national teams. There's not a lot out there about your childhood or anything like that, or why you represented Morocco despite being born in Belgium. So walk me through what your childhood was kind of outside of soccer. What was parents like? What was your home life like? All of that kind of stuff.
So my dad is a first generation immigrant from Morocco. So he was one of a lot of kids. My grandma passed away now, but she used to live in Morocco. So my dad's side of the family is fully Moroccan, and then my mom's side of the family is fully Belgian. So I was born in Belgium, grew up there in a small town called Vlamertinge. That's probably why you didn't hear too much about it. It's a very low-key town, not too many people there, a small community, everyone knows each other type deal. And then basically my whole life has been 95% soccer. I picked up soccer because my older brother played in the local club in Vlamertinge. And I decided that I wanted to play soccer too, because your older brother plays it. You're trying to follow his footsteps. And from there on, I got picked up pretty early to go to the Club Brugge Academy. And from there on, it was a pretty strict regimen. You have to go in from a young age to train 4 times a week, 5 times a week, have a game. So it was, most of my childhood was going to school, my parents driving me to training at night, coming back, doing my homework, and just do the same thing the next day. I'm not complaining about it. It's been my passion since I was a little kid, soccer. So it's basically what revolved around my life mostly. With soccer and trying to become a professional, which is basically the goal since I was a small kid.
How far is Club Brugge from your hometown? Because were you commuting? Like, you weren't staying? Because I know sometimes you join an academy and you stay in a dorm and you live there, but you were commuting back and forth for trainings?
Yeah, well, that's why I'm really grateful for the decision my parents made. You're 5-6 years old. I was picked up by Brugge when I was 6 or 7 years old.
Wow.
So I was really grateful that they wanted to do that commute. A lot of parents kind of think it's a lot of work, because they kind of sacrifice their time at night every day to bring you to training. So from when I was 7 until I was, I think, 12 years old, it was basically commuting 4 times a week. It was an hour away. So right after school at 4 p.m. you leave to make the 6 p.m. session. Then you stay after training. You're home by 10 p.m. So then the next day you do it again. So like from 7 until 12, my mom, my dad, my grandparents sacrificed a lot of time to drive me to training and trying to lay a foundation for the dream that I had. And then obviously when you start getting a little bit older, I was 12 years old, where the club starts to, propose that you go to a boarding school. So from 12 years on, I went to Bruges permanently, and then started going to school there in combination with the academy system. So then the commuting was over. I think it was a good thing for my parents. Maybe they weren't too happy that I was leaving home from a young age.
Yeah, that's super early to be. I mean, all your teenage years are not spent at home. They're spent at a boarding school, essentially.
Yeah. So basically the only day that you would be home was Sunday. You leave Monday morning with the train to Bruges. You go to school, you train some days twice a day. So like I said, most of my life was basically soccer in school and just trying to craft. The academy system was a very strict academy system. Looking back at it, I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity to play. I 13 years looking back at it now, from my 7 until I was 20 years old. But it went through different phases. In the beginning, it was commuting. It was not always easy, but you kind of roll with it. And from 12 years on, I permanently stayed in Bruges, came home on Sunday after the game, Saturday night, and then just did the same thing the next week.
Wow, that's incredible. Before we talk more about Bruges, just a little bit more about growing up. What languages were you speaking? Like, what were your first languages? Because I know there's a lot of languages flying around Belgium. So
in school you speak Dutch. That's the official language in Dutch. Now there's I would say it's a dialect. It's called Flemish. Okay. That's kind of what you speak at home. And with your friends, it doesn't have an official grammar. It's spoken differently in different parts of Flanders. So where I'm from, and for example, Douda is from Belgium. If I would speak the Flemish from the area that I'm from, he would not understand what I'm saying.
Like at all, or like it would just be...
He would catch words here and there, but
it's that different.
It's very different, yes. Wow, okay. So I would say Flemish at home, then Dutch in school. My French was not really good when I was a kid, but then Bruges was a very, national academy, so they would bring in players from a lot of different players in Belgium. So that's when my French got better. You learn it in school. It wasn't great. Had a good amount of players that spoke French in the locker room, and then just, you practice it every day. So French became pretty good. And then obviously English, or I wouldn't survive here in the US.
Well, that's what I was about to ask, because we're doing this podcast in English, and you speak incredible English. You could barely even tell. But you were just learning English in school. Were you fluent? Because we'll get there in a little bit, but you end up coming to the US for college soccer. How was your English when you came?
It was okay. I could have conversations. It wasn't great, but I knew enough English to get by. And then, the credit to the college system in the US, I think it's, incredible how they support the student athletes. They're pretty lenient with players that, their English is not that great yet when they come in. So I really was able to practice my English on a daily basis. You meet new friends, you go to school every day. So
immersion is the way.
I got the privilege to do a few years of college soccer, to really perfect my English before kind of stepping into the real world, because I feel
yeah.
like college is kind of a bubble, you're not
Yeah, it
really in the
is.
real world.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a good experience. It was okay, but it, you know, it got better over the years.
Okay. So before we get to that college soccer, let's talk about Bruges. So obviously you work your way all the way through the levels, through the 13s, the 15s, the 17s, the 21s, I think is where you kind of capped out. During your time there, you represented Morocco at the U17 African Cup in 2013 and the U17 World Championships in 2014. How did it come about that you end up representing Morocco at the youth national team level? Were there conversations with Belgium and there was a choice to make, or were you always going to represent Morocco because of your dad's heritage, or what was that decision process?
It was just
like?
It wasn't supposed to happen. So I was half Moroccan, didn't have my Moroccan passport. So I was just, you know, playing in Bruges, and we had a goalkeeper that was Moroccan. So the Federation of Morocco came down one game into Belgium to watch us play against Standard de Liège, because Standard also had a Moroccan player. So they kind of figured out a way, okay, this game has a few Moroccan potential players to come watch. And just had a good game that day, just played really well. And the goalie that was supposed to talk with the Federation after the game came to get me out of the locker room, because he said, you know, they want to talk to you because they saw my name. Younes Boudadi is not it's not a name that you see too often in Belgium. So they figured out that I was also at least part Moroccan. So then it was, I went to talk to Pim Verbeek. He was a Dutch guy, and he was in charge of the youth national teams of Morocco. And they had the plan of making a project for the next few years where the under 17 AFCON, Africa Cup of Nations, was in Morocco. So we were the host nation. And they wanted to make a project to then qualify through that tournament for the Under-17 World Cup, and to kind of keep that core group together to then move on to Under-20 World Cup qualifiers. And their plan was to get a lot of players out of Europe. You know, Morocco is very close to Europe. You see Moroccans play everywhere in Europe, you know, in Spain and Holland, Germany, France. So they kind of made a group of all the top academies in Europe where they find part Moroccans, and they invited us to a camp. It was maybe 2 weeks later. Got my passport really quickly, flew out to Morocco for a camp where I think maybe 40, 50 players were out of, you know, really good academies in Europe. And I think they were selecting maybe 15 to 20 players, and then just adding maybe 5 or 6 players that played in Morocco as well, domestic players. I think it was good to keep that balance. So yeah, 2 weeks later I was in Morocco for that kind of camp to be selected for the AFCON. I think I showed myself well in those 3 days. Was selected for the Africa Cup of Nations, and then kind of rolled on for the next few years to be in that kind of project. So that was a really good experience.
But you were, at this time, you went back to Morocco to like visit your grandmother and stuff. So this wasn't your first time in Morocco?
It wasn't my first time.
Yeah, okay.
No. It had been a while. So with the academy system, you don't really have any free time in the summer. When July 1st rolls around, you're basically training every day from a young age as well. So there wasn't really too much vacation time to go to Morocco. I only had distant memories from when I was a little kid of going to Morocco, seeing the family. So it was something that was always in the back of my mind. I always felt like I was in my blood. I was feeling a lot of traits that Moroccans would have. You know, very open, very very warm. Kind of going through a life of being in the present, being happy. And I feel like that's a little bit different in Belgium sometimes. So I felt like I had that part in me. So I was very fortunate through the game of soccer to kind of reconnect with my roots. And I was able to go to Morocco multiple times over those next 2-3 years and meet other Moroccan players that played around Europe, and you know, be wearing the badge. You know, it's something that's a feeling that you can't really describe, but it's a big honor to, at any level, to represent your country, and having a lot of people out there to support. So the biggest thing, I was just really fortunate that, you know, I could connect with my roots that I didn't really have grown up in Belgium. So yeah, in that aspect, it was really good.
Was there any reaction from your dad, from your grandmother, from your Moroccan side of the family when they kind of found out that this was an opportunity, or saw you play and pull on a Moroccan jersey for the first time?
Oh, they loved it. You know, they loved it, especially because the Under-17 Africa Cup of Nations was in Morocco. So we played games in Marrakesh and Casablanca, and you just can feel the support and how big the game of soccer is in Morocco. I already knew it was big, but we went in the Under-17s, you know, we're 16, 17 years old at the time. And it's the first time you're really exposed to, you know, playing in big stadiums and having a big crowd, and you can just see how much it lives. You know, we would play against Tunisia, which is a kind of a rival country in Africa. You know, Tunisia, Egypt, Algeria, Morocco, those countries are kind of in the northern part. And I think maybe 25,000 people would show up in these games. You know? And so you could really see how much it lived, and it made me proud to, you know, to be part of that group. And I'm sure that my family was feeling the same way.
Yeah, that's awesome. So amidst this, you're sort of still progressing through the Club Brugge Academy. And then you kind of cap out of the U21s and elect to leave at that point and come to the States to go to Boston College to start your college soccer career. That is quite the change from playing in front of 25,000 people for the Morocco U17s, progressing through the Club Brugge, and all of a sudden you're at BC. So how does that happen? What's the story?
I feel like I've gotten a lot of those reactions at the time when I made that choice. I kind of came at an age and at a point in my, you know, my career in Bruges where I wanted to take that next step. And you're still younger. I didn't have fully the understanding of how the professional world works. You know, I was kind of hoping that a chance would come in the first team. It didn't come right away, especially because I was feeling that my career was starting to take steps in the right direction. You know, you go to the Under-17 World Cup, you go to the Under-20 Moroccan national team. So I came back a little bit impatient looking back at it. You know, you think that things start going your way and everything has to happen right away. So I think on the mental aspect, I don't think I was ready for the next step, looking back at it. At the time, I didn't really see it that way. So I could have made the decision of maybe going down a league, maybe go to second division and play, you know, professional football there, and then kind of work my way up again. But I just think I just needed something new. When you go to an academy, when you're very young and you're there for 13 years, you always have that one goal in your mind of playing for that team and the first team. So there's nothing really else in my mind of changing teams. That was always the main goal. And then when you kind of fall just short of that, mentally it took a big toll on me, and I don't think I was ready to kind of deal with that disappointment. And those are lessons that you learn. But if I look back at it, I wouldn't have changed anything. You know, I loved my time in the US. I've loved being here. I've grown a lot as a person in college football. I think as a player I was there. I don't think as a person and mentally I was there for that next step. And I think those kind of steps to kind of take a step away from the game and find the love for the game again in college kind of made me ready for then step again in professional football. So, you know, at the end, things happen for a reason. I'm happy I made that choice. And otherwise we wouldn't have been sitting here probably.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and for sure, I mean, you joined Bruges at 7 years old and you're just like, you have one mission, and you mentioned it, like there's not a lot of vacation time. You were staying there from age 13, 12, 13 onwards. So maybe that change in your life was just like, you sometimes if you get into the same routine, it can be a negative. You need to like break that routine and do something new to learn something about yourself. So you make decisions to come to the States. I mean, how does that come about? How does that become like okay, I'm going to do this? We had this conversation with Val when he was on, and he made the decision to come to Pitt. But why BC, and then why the States as well? How did it come specifically?
So because I was there and for so long in Bruges, I felt like I had a good relationship with the people in charge of the academy. You know, they knew me well, I knew them well. And it was not really a situation. I felt the respect from their end, knowing that I was there for such a long time, that they were trying to figure out the best way for me to move on. I didn't really have the idea of moving to another team in Belgium. And the head of academy in Bruges contacted the person, or like, you know, you could call it an agent, that I was working with. And he was at the time at the Under-17 World Cup I think it was in Chile in 2015. And he met someone there that was in the college system, and he basically said, do you have any players in your academy that would be open to, you know, that are maybe smart enough to go to college, that want to take that step, that are at an age that they can do it? And he thought of me and reached out to me and with that idea. And the first time I heard it, it was always the click in my head. I was like, yes, I want to do that. It sounded like such a great experience, something that I was looking for, something completely different, but also still a way where I could continue my soccer career. I tried doing university in Belgium when I was still in Bruges. Twice I went to Ghent, I went to Bruges. It just wasn't working out. Like the time frame of going to training, going to school wasn't working out. So I feel like I was kind of missing out on both. The feeling that I missed out on jumping into the first team at Bruges, and I missed out on getting an education. When that kind of rolled around, it felt like everything made sense. and I didn't really think about it too much. So then I started working with this agency in Belgium that helps players move to colleges in the US, because obviously I didn't have any idea of what was going on.
Yeah.
He kind of made a profile for me, which obviously was a good profile at the time for recruiters in colleges. And it kind of snowballed from there. I think I made my decision to go to the US in February or March, and I think I was committed to a school in May. So it was, it went very quickly. And then BC was just a school that was really approaching me on a personal level. I was looking at some different schools, but the coach was Irish, looked out for me really well. And it was a team with a lot of Europeans with a very similar story. So when they flew me out to Boston to visit the school, visit the city, before I made a decision, met a lot of players there that were in the same situation as me before. We had some German guys that played at Dortmund, at Bochum. We had a guy that played in Basel, in Switzerland.
Yeah.
So a lot of guys with similar stories. So I just felt at home right away. They kind of toured me around that weekend, made a decision pretty quickly to go to Boston College, and didn't really look back.
Yeah, it's so interesting for me. I mean, we've had a couple college soccer conversations on this podcast, and I play college soccer at the D2 level at Queens and Charlotte, and we had a similar roster to what it sounds like it was at BC, pretty heavily international, lots of guys from a couple different European countries, a couple Brazilians as well, guys that had played at good academies and Sheffield Wednesday and some good places. I was on the opposite end, right? Like you were coming in and being like, oh, this international group is this group of guys I can be comfortable with because they have an interesting story. I was like an American kid coming into that, and that was a pivotal point in my life of meeting these people from all around the world and having this multicultural locker room that taught me a lot, which I find fascinating, and I think was a lot of the value of like being a part of a college soccer team. So what was it like once you arrived at BC for that freshman year, going into preseason and meeting all the guys and starting to like form a team and look ahead to the season?
It was great, I think I was at that point at a time where I wanted something different, and I found it. I had guys. I went from a situation where, from a young age, it was very competitive. It was, if you're not the guy, the next guy's up. Every year you're kind of fighting to go through the next year. You try to go from under 12s to under 13s, and that was kind of the goal every year. And in college soccer was the first time that I really felt a group feeling, or at least a feeling that the competitiveness was less there. It was more about the character of the guys and trying to really create a strong team environment to get something together.
Competitiveness in terms of like the head to head, individual to individual, but being competitive as a group and looking to accomplish something together was something you hadn't seen in the academy as much.
Yes, especially because you're kind of signing a deal for, the scholarship is not a professional deal, but you sign a scholarship for 4 years. So you know what you're in for, and it's 4 years of trying to better yourself, trying to get through school, and it's not like, okay, if you don't do well this year, you're getting cut. So I feel like it was easier for players to really put that side of it aside and really bond with the players and create a strong team environment. And then it helped, obviously, that we had guys from all over Europe. It's kind of the main reason why I chose Boston College, because we had a mix. We had Americans, we had Europeans. On the other hand, I visited, for example, a school like Penn State, where I felt a little bit more out of touch because I felt like it was very US player dominated, where I was not really comfortable with the country yet. So it helped for me to adjust in that way, and really learn about US as well. I learned about different parts of the US. I learned about how guys live here, how they grew up in US and go through club systems, and really understood that there's not really at the time an academy system. Now it's different. But at the time it wasn't really there. So I really understood that for some guys, making it to, for example, a D1 college program was a big deal. And it kind of, puts responsibility on you, because you feel honored that you get a full scholarship ride, whereas some guys, you feel like work their whole life to get that scholarship at that school. So I definitely learned about the college culture, about, guys really having a main goal in their life to go to a D1 school or a D2 school, play at a high level in college. So it was a great experience overall. Yeah,
that's awesome. So your freshman year was the best year there. I mean, you guys went 9-3, but you got all the way to the ACC semifinals, beat UNC on the way there. Won your first round in the NCAA tournament against Fordham. Then you lost to Albany in the second round. Reflecting back on that freshman year, where you started every single game that you were available for, and seemed to just be a bang-on starter straight from the beginning. Reflecting back on that, what experiences or memories pop out from that year?
the one game that pops out, maybe it's not for the best reasons, is that UNC game. So, you know, you come to the US and you try to learn about this college system where you have an RPI and you have, you know, it's not really full standings. You have very different conferences, and then through the RPI, you try to get into the tournament. And the ACC was a very strong conference, and it's kind of one of those conferences where if you go 9-9, you're in. You just have to make sure that you don't lose more games than you win. But if you, and before that UNC game, we were, I think, 9-8. And we go into a UNC team. I played together against Cam Lindley, was my teammate at Indy. We talked about that game a lot. We had to win. And it was against the number one team in the country at the time. They were really good.
And context being, you lost 5-0 to them in the regular season.
We lost 5-0 against them in the regular season, exactly. And we go there, and for some reason, the gods were with us that day. I think we had 0 shots on goal officially, but we score on a deflected goal. It was just one of those games where things were supposed to go your way. It did go our way. And after that game, we knew we made it to the tournament. So that was one game that I have a lot of memories from. So my first home game, we played against Boston University with Boston College, and it was a great atmosphere. You know, I was just still new to the country. I was just kind of taking it all in, enjoying the games. I was grateful that the coach trusted me from the beginning, and you know, basically played every game in college that I could.
Were you playing as a right back?
As a right back, yeah. I've played multiple positions in college, but mostly right back. So yeah, it was that UNC game stood out. My first few home games in college stood out. I was just finding the love for the game again. You know, I felt like it was a fresh start. I was really enjoying it. So yeah, that first year was definitely special. Cool.
And then you move on to your sophomore year. You guys went 6-10-1, so just on the wrong side of 500. Don't make the NCAA tournament. You got knocked out of the ACC tournament by UVA. Was the team a lot different that year? Or do you think, I mean, the margins are just that thin? Like 9-9 gets you into the NCAA tournament. 6-10, not quite.
Yeah. Well, that year is kind of a jump up year, because then I changed schools the next year. We haven't jumped into that yet. But as a team, we did not as good. Personally, it was probably my better year than my freshman year.
Yeah, you had 8 assists.
Yeah, so that year I really kind of started to find my stride into, you know, a new environment. I think I had 8 or 9 assists in, you know, a short college season, I think maybe in 16 games. So that year I really started to have the feeling of, okay, maybe I can play professional here. When I came to college in the US, it wasn't really my main goal. It was something that was in the back of my head. Okay, this is a possibility after my 4 years in college. I know it's there. But after my sophomore year, I really started having that competitive itch again that I came back from my academy days. It's something that I didn't really have in my freshman year. I was kind of just trying to enjoy this new environment. But then the sophomore year came around, and we didn't really win too much. So that started to annoy me a little bit. Personally, I had a good year. So then I made a decision to move schools, basically just for the sake of trying to become a professional and get drafted after college.
Was that a tough decision? Because you spoke a little bit about, you know, arriving at BC and this team environment, and so I'm sure you had made some good friends, had roommates, and all that kind of stuff. Was it tough? You end up going to Creighton. Is it tough to make that decision to transfer out in the middle of this 4 years?
Yeah, it wasn't, and it was in a way that I respected the school a lot. I respected the head coach a lot. I respected the guys on the team a lot. We made really close friendships. It's something that maybe Val talked about as well. In college, it's just a different type of bonding. You probably can relate as well. It's a different type of bonding that you have with guys in college. You're together every day, all year. So it was tough to leave them. It was tough to leave the program, tough to leave the friends that I've made in the last 2 years. But at that moment, I kind of shifted my mindset from, okay, let me enjoy these 4 years in college to, okay, let me get drafted. And I started researching schools where that would be possible, and only reached out to really a handful of them. Creighton was just known to be the only program that have sent players into the draft every year since the MLS started up. That spoke to me. Got in contact with the head coach at the time, Elmar Bolowich, and the assistant, who's now the head coach, Johnny Torres, which was a great mentor for me. Visited the school and was pretty sold pretty quickly on the program, and made the jump. Nice.
So then you arrive at Creighton, and straight away bang on started there for your junior and senior year again. I mean, I want to talk about this junior season. You guys went 11-4-3, 7-1-1, and didn't make the NCAA tournament. I mean, here's the conversation about RPI here. How are you not in the tournament?
Yeah, this was probably the biggest disappointment I've had in my 4 years of college, because that junior year was really a special team. We were really good. I think the whole year we were ranked top 5 in the country, which is not as good of a conference as the ACC. So then the last 2 games of the season, we kind of dropped points against 2 teams that were lower in the RPI, and we just don't make it. No one expected it. I think at the time we were one of the best teams in the nation. I think at the time it was a record of the highest RPE team ever not to make the tournament. A lot of guys went pro from that team afterwards. Recently, Akeem Ward from Colorado, was part of that team. So yeah, that was a disappointment. But
that's tough. It's tough when it's taken out of your hands as well. Like you have no control over it. You're just sitting there watching the selection show, like hoping to see Creighton. But
and it didn't come. Luckily, I still had a senior year, but I really felt for the guys that was their last year. Trying to go out on a bang. But, happens. Stuff happens in life.
and you don't even realize either. Like you guys lost your Big East tournament game on penalties to Marquette, which hurts. But then you lose that game and you think, okay, well we're gonna have another shot. And you almost wish you would have for some of those seniors would have known that was the last game, so that you could have appreciated that post game. But then it sort of goes out.
That's what we thought. It was like, okay, we lost here, but we're still gonna make it, and we didn't make it. So
you had a goal this year. Do you remember your goal?
A goal in what?
In that you had a goal in that season. It says you have 1 goal and 4 assists.
I did.
Yeah. Do you remember the goal?
At St. John's. Yes.
Okay.
With my left foot as well. So yes, I remember that goal.
I think that's your only college goal.
It was.
Yeah. So I guess since 2016, between not scoring a goal professionally in 133 appearances and 1 goal across 4 years of college soccer. So since 2016, you've scored 1 goal, not counting maybe exhibitions or something. So
it's maybe a flaw in my game I gotta work on. It's not like I'm not looking for it. I've been unlucky a few times, hit the bar a few times in professional game too, missed some one-on-ones. It'll come.
Well, we're continuing to speak a goal against El Paso into existence. Quickly, then let's wrap up college stuff. You referenced it earlier, but going into your senior year, the head coach that you transferred there, Elmar Bolowich, he resigns in November. Longtime assistant Johnny Torres gets promoted. What was that transition like? You mentioned Johnny being a big mentor to you.
Yeah, he just has. You can tell it's a guy that he had a tough upbringing, kind of came to the US and played at Creighton himself, won the Mac Herman Trophy twice, had a long career in MLS, and then he loved Creighton so much he came back to the program to be a long-term assistant. He had offers to go to other schools as a head coach, decided not to take it because his main goal and his dream was to be the head coach of the Creighton program. We all felt that as, when I was a junior, we just felt the passion and the love that he has for the program and for the players that he brings in, and the passion to develop players and send them to the pro level. And it's sort of an energy that transmits to the team. You just feel the passion he has for the game, the passion he has for the players, the passion he has for coaching. And he helped me a lot in that aspect, to kind of prepare myself and help me to get into the draft, and kind of really sticking his head out for me, looking out for me. So it's a guy that I really value a lot.
Is there a memory, experience, a conversation you have with Johnny that kind of sticks out, that encapsulates that relationship?
Yes. It's kind of a funny story. In my senior year, we go to Germany for a 2-week trip. And we play, I think, a game against a local team in Germany. It was kind of like a summer trip to prepare us for the season. And me being a stupid young guy, we go out with a few guys the day before the game. Not really going out, but we stay out late.
Sure.
We come back in the hotel, and he was waiting on us. We were in there, and he was so disappointed, man. He was so, you could just see in his eyes that we hurt him, and it was 3 of us seniors. It was me and 2 other seniors that, and he had tears in his eyes and really explained to us that, that we're seniors now and we need to set the example for the locker room. And that's a moment that always stayed with me because, he was right. And it was something that I took along with me now and still always think about, like once you get into a position where you can affect the players that are younger, you have to do it. It's not about just yourself anymore in situations like that. And there I really felt that he cared. I could really tell that it hurt him. And that was right before our senior year. So then I think it was maybe a story that wasn't great in that aspect, but it really made me respect him. And I think the respect came from the other way as well when I tried to put everything that I had into my senior year and really help him into his first year as a head coach from the program, which I know he had been waiting on for so long. So, in that aspect, that's a story that stayed with me because it definitely taught me to put the energy that he put into team, put that back in there, and it kind of changed me for the better, that situation. Yeah.
That's amazing. Do you stay in touch with Johnny still?
Yes. I sent him a picture with Akeem last week. I tried to, we talk a few times a year. I still haven't made it back to Creighton because the season is always in line with when we play. But I love that guy. I'm sure I'll visit at some point and we stay in touch. So yeah. That's
awesome. So then you finish up your senior year, which is Johnny's first. You have an okay year, and that happens, 8-7-2. But then you, I guess, enter the MLS draft. How did that process work as you're thinking about, okay, college career's done. I came to Creighton to become a pro soccer player. Now I need to take the next step. Did you hire an agent? What was the process?
Well, at the time, it was still, you couldn't hire an agent when you were not drafted yet, or like when you were not signed yet, or you would lose your eligibility when you're still playing in college.
Right.
So you kind of had to wait until the end of the season to start talking to agents. I had a good 2 years at Creighton. I felt like personally I played good enough to get drafted, but how the system works in college, if the team doesn't do too well, we didn't make the tournaments for those 2 years. And at Creighton, so
there's not a lot of eyes and visibility on you.
Exactly. And I came to college when I was a little older. I was 20 years old in my freshman year. So by the time I graduated, I was 23. And then you have some different variables in the US that make your situation a little bit tougher. I'm a foreigner, I'm European, so the club would need to spend a foreign spot on you. I'm a little bit older, I'm 23, coming out of college. So I was hopeful, but I wasn't sure. But I was hopeful, so I stayed in the US. I didn't go home that winter break just to prepare for the opportunity if it happened. And then luckily, it happens. I was the last pick in the draft, so it was kind of like a little sign of...
Nearly the last pick. I looked at it because I was going to bring that up.
Well, officially the last pick, but a lot of teams passed on picks, so it was...
Oh, okay. So because there were 104 picks in the draft, but you were 102.
Yes.
But they passed on 103 and 104.
I think that year, I don't know why it happened that year, but I think from the 104 potential picks, I think maybe only 50 or 60 players got drafted. So I think 30, 40 spots got just, teams just decided not to pick someone. So technically I was the last pick, but, I was very grateful that it happened and I was very happy. Yeah.
Are you familiar with the Mr. Irrelevant from the NFL draft?
Yeah. I was Mr. Irrelevant.
Yeah, you were Mr. Irrelevant. That's amazing. Well, LAFC did pick you. I worked for Charlotte FC previous to this, so I'm familiar with the process that typically, you get drafted, and getting drafted doesn't mean you have a pro contract.
No.
Getting drafted basically means, hey, we're going to bring you to preseason, and you basically are a trialist, and then we might sign you. So did you go to preseason with LAFC and it didn't work out after the first couple of weeks, or what's the story there?
We go to LAFC when the draft happened a week after LAFC started their preseason because they were playing CONCACAF Champions League, so they started preseason a bit earlier. So when we got drafted with 4 international guys, I think I was drafted with another guy from Spain and I think 2 Brazilians. So we all go into preseason together, and it was kind of my first experience again with professional football or at least a professional setting in football since I left Belgium. So it was an adjustment again. We came into a loaded team at the time. They just came off a season where they won the title.
Carlos Vela,
Brian Rodriguez, Diego Rossi, Blackman, Mark Anthony Kay, Blessing. It was just a really stacked team. So I kind of came in with just taking it day by day, not really having too much expectation on getting signed. But for me, it was, I wouldn't say I didn't care, but I was just excited to start my professional career wherever that might be. And I feel like getting drafted, especially as a foreigner, was the first step for me into starting my professional career in the US. So I kind of took it from there. We did the whole preseason there, and I think LAFC was great in accommodating players to let them move on to a different environment. So sometimes you see teams draft players and kind of just after 1 week not having them train anymore. In LAFC, they made sure that we got our reps in, we got playing time in friendlies, and they talked to USL clubs to offer them to USL clubs. So then when preseason ended there, they were very professional. Nothing bad to say about the LAFC organization. I had a great time there. They were going to release all of our draft guys, and Reno 1868 came up, and basically a day later I was on the way
Reno.
there. Yeah.
Wow. So your first experience in Nevada, in northern Nevada. So you got signed in March 2020 by Reno officially, is the press release that I found. That would have been right when the pandemic started,
Right.
So did you get signed and then the pandemic hit, or vice versa?
Well, there's been a
or
few moments that were very pivotal in my career, and that was definitely one of them, because I signed my contract maybe 5 days before the COVID pandemic hit. Now, if I was maybe a week later, I didn't have my contract, I would have had to go back to Belgium, because I didn't have a contract, I didn't have a work visa, so I didn't have a way to stay in the country, and I probably wouldn't have had played successfully or professionally in the US.
Yeah.
So that point was really important, that I got lucky and unlucky maybe at the same time. That, you know, my first year in the league kind of got cut short in the beginning, at least with COVID. But on the other hand, I got very lucky that I signed right before it happened, because I know some other players got in that same situation and then had to go home because they didn't have a contract signed yet. And, you know, then it's very hard to come back, especially in the 2 years that followed with COVID restrictions. Before that happened, I signed.
I mean, so how long had you been in Reno when the pandemic hit? Like a couple weeks, right?
A few weeks, yeah. A few weeks.
So did you have an apartment on your own? Like, what were you doing? Because obviously the world like shut down. Yeah. April, May, June was like bubble. No one was going anywhere. Yeah. So were you just hanging out in Reno on your own, or what was going on?
Well, it was a very, the league grew a lot, first of all. So in 2020, the housing situation was definitely not as the same as it is, now across the league. So in the beginning, they would put all the players in the Harris Hotel. Reno is kind of like Vegas, but just smaller. Just casinos everywhere, hotels everywhere. So all the players would live in the Harris Hotel. But then when COVID happened, they shut down all the hotels, all the places that were all the malls. So they had to find housing for all these players from one day notice to another. So they find apartments around that area, and then we were kind of going from day by day. I think everyone was kind of going day by day, not really sure what was going on. Luckily, the contracts were respected. We were kind of just waiting around for a few months. We had a good group of guys that kind of did the same thing, just came out of college in the year or 2 years before that. So we had a core group of maybe 10 guys that stayed in Reno, and we would just meet up every day. In the morning, we'd go play, we'd stay fit. Then go to Lake Tahoe a lot on the weekends when we had off, because we basically were off every day. But it was trying to stay in shape, but also not really knowing what was going to happen, and it ended up being, I think, a 4 or 5 month span of that.
Because at the time, when it first hit, everyone thought, okay, 2 weeks and then we're going to be back, and then okay, now another month and then we're going to be back, and so you're always kind of trying to stay fit because you think the season might start in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever it might be. It ultimately doesn't start until like September later that year, and you do end up getting your first professional appearances. You played, I think, in 7 games for Reno, including subbing on late in the overtime game in the quarterfinals of the playoffs that year. You ultimately lost in penalties, and then the team folds. So what happens then? Because you end up in Hartford ahead of the the 2021 season. So like, when did you find out the team was folding and you were going to have to find a new solution, and how did that all go down?
Well, the whole season was kind of a learning process for me in the aspect of the guy that was playing in my position was a veteran, Brent Richards, good player. So I had to wait for my chance. I think the first 7 games when COVID season ended up starting, I didn't play a minute for the first 7 games, and kind of learned there to just stay ready for when my chance comes. I didn't really mind it. I just was working, trying to stay fit because I knew it would come at some point. Then grabbed my chances when it came, and in the short time period that I played in Reno, I think I showcased myself enough to create interest from other teams when the team folded. Now we didn't know, so my option was basically already picked up. So I had an option for the next year. Brent Richards ended up moving on. So the plan was for me to then be a consistent starter in my second year. And the team folds. We get a message in the group chat that the news was leaked to some reporter, so the ownership felt like they had to rush communication to the group, and it was basically one message of like, hey guys, the news is going to come out later today. We didn't want it to come out this way, but the team is folding. Basically everyone's free from today on, and that's kind of what it was.
So then you're on the phone with your agent, like, let's figure this out.
Let's figure this out. And luckily, Hartford kind of showed interest pretty soon on, and I think 2 weeks maybe after the team folded, I signed in Hartford. So that decision came pretty quickly, and at that point of my career I was looking for a lot of game time, and I think the project that Hartford proposed kind of gave me that option, and went from there, came in Hartford, and that's kind of what came from. That's kind of what really kickstarted my USL career.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, your career kind of takes off when you go to Hartford. You made 28 appearances in 2021, 2 assists, 34 appearances in 2022 with 2 assists. You led the team in minutes. In 2022, 2,796 minutes, by the way, in case you were curious. But it's 2 really solid years in Hartford where you go from okay, maybe I'm going to make this pro career. But I mean, looking back on it, right? Like, didn't quite make it with the LAFC. Okay, then you go to Reno, the pandemic hits, you're playing behind a veteran, whatever. Okay, is this whole pro thing going to work out? Yeah. And then with Hartford, it does. Yeah. So how do you look back on those 2 years with Hartford?
It's great, man. I get so much love every time I go back to Hartford, and I've had a really close relationship with the fan base there. I had a really good feeling about it because, you know, when you play a lot, it makes life a lot easier, you know, let's put it that way. And I really felt like I learned a lot about the league. I learned a lot about what it takes to, you know, play at a consistent level in this league. I had a coach at the time that really believed in me and that gave me the room for making errors as a young player in the league, or like at least a player that hasn't played too many minutes in the league yet. I feel like it's a process that you have to go through, understanding different away environments, understanding what it takes to stay healthy a full year. So in that aspect, I learned a lot in those 2 seasons. I felt like I was making a name for myself, getting a lot of game time, learning a lot about the league, learning a lot about myself, how to keep myself healthy. So I feel like those 2 years were really pivotal for me to, or at least made a switch in my mind of, okay, I really want to become a consistent, and I know I can be a consistent player in this league. Yeah.
I mean, speaking of consistency and health, I mean, let's look back through your career. I mean, college soccer was a ridiculous amount of games. Boston College was 35 games, 35 starts. Creighton was 34 games, 33 starts. And then obviously you go to Hartford and it's like 28 games, 34 games. Yeah. And then we'll fast forward to the other ones. But I mean, spoiler alert, like you don't get injured. You're always available. Maybe you picked up little things here and there, like we talked about earlier, just being smart with this one. But the old cliche of like availability is a talent. Yeah. But I mean, that consistency and that availability has been a hallmark of your professional career so far.
Yeah, someone told me that the best ability is availability. Yeah. You know, it's one of those things that I think I have the privilege of, or that I was taught this from a young age in the academy system, how important it is to take care of your body and do things the right way. And if you find a consistency in the way that you take care of yourself, you'll find yourself being more consistent on the field. It's just small things every day that, you know, make a big difference in the long run. And if you kind of give yourself the freedom of being available most of the time, you don't really have to worry about getting back into rhythm too much and too often. So you can really focus on playing yourself into the season and getting a good rhythm going and consistency going. And that's kind of what builds up to being available at the end of the year. It's maybe also a trust thing, you know, if you know you're available a lot. So yeah, I think it's really important, especially I have the goal of having a long career. I want to play until the wheels fall off. I have a goal until playing until I'm 38, 40. And I know that's not possible if you don't take care of your body. So I've felt the difference in taking care of it. There was times where I didn't, and there's definitely a big change in my performance on the field. I feel like I'm less consistent. The body hurts. You're just more focused on things that you shouldn't be focused on in a way of, you know, this hurts and this and that. Then maybe I should have been in the gym this day and maybe I should have stretched. So I feel like the way I would describe it is it takes away the doubt in your mind and it takes away the extra things that you shouldn't be thinking about. And at the end of the day, it gives consistency on the field too. So it's definitely something that I pride myself in, and being available a lot and having my body right, being fit. So there's just less things to worry about when the game starts.
What are the details of that for you? Like, what are the things you prioritize? Is it gym work? Is it sleep? Is it nutrition? Is it all of the above? What are the details of keeping your body in tip-top shape? Yeah,
I feel like it kind of snowballed from one thing to another, you know. What really changed, I was taking care of my body because obviously college has great facilities, but I tore my hamstring in the beginning of preseason, my first year in Hartford, and that's kind of where I made the switch of, okay, I really need to nitpick all the small things that I need to do for this not to happen, because I want to play a lot of games, and this was kind of my year that I had to play a lot of games. It was my second year, and that was the reason why I was there. So, you know, it's a lot of small things. You start with stretching, then it turns into, I feel so much better if I stretch every day. And then you start doing mobility, you start learning about your body. You feel how much an impact sleep makes. So you start figuring out ways, how is the best way to get good sleep, recovery, just nutrition. You start feeling the difference, and you stack those days. And after a while, you just feel how much different you feel. And it's almost that you can't go without anymore because you feel the difference if you don't. So it almost became second nature, where I try to really hone down on my nutrition and sleep and activation before training and stretching and gym work to really stay stay on top of my game.
Well, I think it's coming across. I spoke to Antonio this morning before training, before you guys came out, because I had to go find him for something else. And he was like, who's on the podcast today? I was like, oh, well, Younes is on the podcast today. And I was like, what? I was searching for gossip. I was like, should I ask him anything? Like, is there anything that the guys are making fun of him for? Something I can surprise him with? He's like, no. But he was like, no, I love Younes as a player because he has the right attitude, he's consistent, and he has this level of professionalism that is above and beyond. He was like, oh, if I could have 10 Younes, I'd have 10 Younes, and in his English, which which was very funny. But he was
the accent wasn't quite that, but
not quite there. He just misses words. It's okay. But I think that's coming across, right? And I think it's also the way you carry yourself off the field, here on podcasts, on media appearances, with the guys in the locker room. All of those things add up to the coach selecting you and playing you. So I think it's coming across. Let's jump back quickly, because you end up leaving Hartford, and you spoke about having a great relationship with the fans and stuff there. But you leave after that second season and join Indy 11. How did that offseason go? How did that transfer happen?
So I had 2 good years in Hartford, so I had quite some interest in that after those 2 years, but I was really looking for my next step forward in the league. I loved playing at Hartford, but I just had a feeling that I wanted to go to a team that was maybe a little bit more, Hartford was still pretty new, to a team that was more established in the league, and maybe a team that financially and every way possible was pushing for a title. That's what I wanted to play for. So Indy 11 comes around, and Mark Lowry, the coach at the time, when I went over there, I felt like he really believed in me and the system that he wanted to play. I remember watching him coach El Paso at the time, that went on an unbelievable 2 years spell, played amazing football, didn't lose a lot of games. So I was always interested in playing under Mark. And then when he came around and, offered me to come to Indy, I kind of jumped on it right away. That's kind of how it went about. I think I signed pretty early as well. I think I signed somewhere early in November maybe early in December or late in November. I was one of the first signings at that time.
That was very early in terms of USL especially.
Yeah. So, I know Indy was a good club, or an established club in USL. And then that combined with, we're able to work with Mark, was definitely a decision that made it pretty easy for me. Yeah,
I think this, on paper at least, this ends up becoming maybe your best professional season. I don't know if this is how you feel about it, but you played 34 games and had 5 assists. The team qualified for playoffs. You played in the first round of playoffs for the first time since playing for Reno in your rookie year, I think. So what do you look back on that year? What went right for you?
I think kind of the same thing that happened with a coach that I had in Hartford, Harry Walding. He kind of did the same with me, where he saw my quality and he understood that there were still small things that they wanted to tweak in my game. But I think they trusted me enough to kind of get those little things out of my game throughout the year. Because I would say my first 5 or 10 games in Indy were okay. They were not great, but it was also because it was a whole new project. So they brought in a lot of new players in that year in Indy. They brought in, Cam Lindley, Quenzadi, a lot of players that have been around in the league, and they try to build a project and try to play in completely different style under Mark Lowry, which took a while. But around July, I would say, we really started going. And I think we maybe lost 1 or 2 games from July on up until the playoffs. And we really had a good team going. I feel like in the system that we played, it helped me bring my qualities forward on the ball. He fine-tuned my game a lot in ways to defend the box, the one-on-one defending, finding moments to come inside as an outside back and overlap, the right moments to join the attack, when to play short, when to play long. So really fine-tuning my game again. Then from the summer on, I feel like we were rolling, and I feel like that was probably the best few months that I've had in the league, where everything started to click as a team, personally. It's just a lot of different circumstances that come together for that.
And then you guys roll into 2024, and seems like more of the same for you. I mean, you had an assist every other game. You had 5 assists through 9 appearances, and then bam, you're back in Hartford. Like, what? This is like one of the crazier USL transfers out there. Because I feel like basically straight swaps are very common in American sports here, but very uncommon in the sport of soccer. But this deal was essentially a straight swap. You went back to Hartford. Jamaican journeyman forward Romario Williams, who was coming off a 15-goal season for Colorado, goes the other way from Hartford. I mean, how did this news get broken to you? Were you like, what, you're trading me for another player? What's going on here?
Yeah, it's so the coaching staff's changed after my first year.
Okay.
So the Mark Lowry leaves and a new coaching staff comes in. And that year was kind of the first year where I started struggling a little bit with last year. This was last season. With small tweaks, I rolled my ankle really bad the first game of the year. So I kind of try to navigate through that, and then small other injuries kind of pop up because of, playing through injuries.
Yeah.
Different circumstances. Then the different coach comes in, so obviously he has a different idea of how he wants to manage the team. The way football goes, new coaches come in, they want to bring in, their own players, their own team, because most of the team was still Mark Lowry's team. And then the games that I played, I think I was very important for the team. I didn't play too many, so I think maybe through 15 or 16 games, I played 7, 8, or 9 games. Yeah. Missed a good amount of games with small injuries, but didn't see it coming. Obviously didn't see it coming. I think at the time, the new coach was trying to adjust his squad to the squad that he would like it to be, and like the playing style that he would like it to be. So then that aspect, I understand these things, the way the business works. Sometimes things happen that are out of your control, and you just have to move on, And when I heard that it was about that I was going to get traded to Hartford, at least I felt like in a way I played there before. So the adjustment was going to be much easier than going to a different market or city or team that I've never been to mid-season.
Yeah.
So in that aspect,
mid-season transfer can be hard. Like trying to break your way into a team. There's already an established starter, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Especially
because the team was doing well. I think at the time we were like in a 12-game winning streak on India. I think we didn't lose for 12 games straight, or actually win 12 games straight. So the vibes were good. I think it was something that no one really expected. The players maybe didn't expect it. I didn't expect it.
Yeah.
But things happen for a reason. You move on and you go back to Hartford and the place that I felt really loved and appreciated, and finish out the year there. It was kind of a year of kind of swimming against the current, just with my own body. It was the first time that I kind of experienced that in a long time, where small nicks and naggles come up here and there. But all these things play in together, like we said, like it's a physical game, but it's also a mental game. When a lot of things happen out of your control, it seems to happen that way, that then physically also small things start to happen. So I think it was more, last year was a transition year again to really get my mind right, my body right. And now this year was the focus on getting back and fully my feet under my leg, under my body, or under your shoulders. How do you say that?
Yeah.
Getting fully running again.
Yeah, whatever the phrase is.
Yes. And kind of make that impact again that I felt like I made in the league before that.
I mean, you still ended up making 17 appearances for the year with Hartford. So while you did struggle with some injuries, arriving mid-season and making 17 appearances is still a pretty good haul, all things considered. You actually, I mean, funny enough, I was looking at this when I joined the club in August, and I moved here in September of last year. So I wasn't here for the whole season last year, and I had just signed my contract and was like organizing my move to Las Vegas. So I was like, okay, I should start studying up with the team. And they played Hartford away. So I was in a parking lot watching the Hartford Las Vegas Lights game on my phone, and you started this game. So funnily enough, I probably watched you play without realizing it at the time. And you won at a time when the Lights were really hot as well. Like they were on a big winning streak, and that was and you were chasing playoffs at the time. You guys end up finishing 10th. I think missed playoffs by like 4 points. But I remember that Hartford team last year being on a charge. Late on in the season, you were on one, and it looked like you might sneak into that 8 spot, but didn't quite make it happen.
I feel like in that aspect, I helped Hartford. I would say I helped them more off the field than on the field last year when I went back. I just felt like I had a good understanding of where the club was and where it was before, because I was there before. And I think the team wasn't really connected at the time. And even though I had a little bit of injuries, I felt like I made an impact in getting the team together and really getting one on the roll late in the year. Now, a funny story is too, I remember playing against Joe Zhao last year when he came to Hartford in Solo. I played with Solo at Indy. A really close friend of mine. Was warning me about Joe. He's like, he's a fast guy. You have to be careful with him. So I was
good Solo accent, by the way.
So he made me sharp before the game, and I remember that game very vividly. Against Vegas, one of those games that stood out. We won. It was a good game personally as well. So. We laugh about it sometimes in the locker room about this game.
Yeah. That's amazing. So then that Hartford game ends with maybe a little bit of heartbreak there at the end, not quite getting over the line into playoffs. And then you head into the off season and end up in Las Vegas. So same question I've asked you a couple times now, but what was the process? How did you go from Hartford, who had traded for you, who like had gone back out to get a player that they had before, and then you decide, I don't know if you decided it wasn't the right place or they decided it wasn't the right place, but then you end up here.
Well, like I said, like I felt like I was in a good run of form over a few years in the league, and then last year was kind of a year where I struggled with a little bit of injuries and mid-season trade, and you're getting a little bit older, you know, in this country, like 29 is seen as a little bit more as a veteran, maybe more as in Europe. So, and you have an international tag on your name, which a lot of teams don't have a lot of them. So I kind of went through this off season with very slow off season. That's another thing that I didn't really experience yet. Like the previous 3-4 contracts that I signed in this league were signed really quickly after the season was done. So this was the first time that I had to wait. You know, there's interest, but no one really jumped on it. And it was kind of a feeling that I didn't have before. It's like, okay, you know, in soccer things can go really quick one way and things can go really quick the other way. So I really made it my point to be physically and mentally really prepare this off season for the chance whenever it would come. Like I was confident that there would be some plays that would pop up. Vegas offered me the opportunity to come here, and you know, jumped on it right away. And you know, I was just excited to make an impact again. You know, I played a little bit with a chip on my shoulder, feeling coming in after this off season, almost like, you know, trying to prove that I'm still the player that I was before a year of a little bit of setbacks. So that was really my mentality going in, trying to help the team with my knowledge about the league, try to help the team with my personal qualities, and just being a good teammate, a good player, trying to be an overall good fit for the club.
Yeah, I think you've shown that recently. You started 4 of the last 6 matches, but before that, you weren't playing, and through no fault of your own. Probably got to be one of the most frustrating periods of your career, just sitting around waiting for the visa process to sort itself out, which is, I mean, for fans that don't know, like the context of you not, because you were here, like you arrived first day of preseason, part of the team, like all the way through, but it seemed like, okay, like maybe his visa's not going to get sorted for the home opener, but then it'll be fine. And then it was like, okay, maybe by the 3rd game, and then all of a sudden we were 7 games in, and we still didn't have a visa for Younes Boudadi, but then you finally got it done. But I mean, what was that process like for you? How frustrating was it to sit on the sideline, be healthy, be available, but just not be cleared to play through registration?
It was not easy, but it was. I'm happy that this happened a little bit later in my career than earlier. That's I feel like where the lessons you learn over the last few years is where it really kicks in. You know, like in moments where it's not that easy. But you know, it's a long season, and you have to stay ready. You know, like it's things that happen out of your control, and the more you let it affect you, the more it's going to hurt yourself in the long run. So I really try to go in training every day, just with faith that the visa would come in on someday, you know. I was starting to feel like a practice player, but you know, like I was just really focused on staying ready for when the chance would come and when the visa would come in, knowing that it would come at some point. But obviously it wasn't that easy mentally, especially because it came off an off season where I was already trying to prove something, and then, you know, you go through a whole preseason and then you have to sit out and see all these games happen and you want to jump in, but you know, it was more of a mental thing, I would say. Just trying to stay sharp and ready and keep my fitness up for when the chance would come, because, you know, this league demands a lot of it has a lot of physical demands, so I couldn't really just sit back and relax, because I knew if I do that, then it's going to be very hard to come back in with a lot of players that already had a few weeks of games in their legs.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about the outside back room here. We've got Gennaro, Sean Smart, Shaft Brewer, yourself. There's quite a lot of outside backs vying for minutes. What's it like playing with that group of guys and competing with that group of guys every week?
It's great. You know, I feel like me and Sean have a great relationship. If you talk to him, he'll probably say the same thing, because I see a lot of similar traits in myself that he has. Just very hungry to work. I'll talk more about, you know, the right side of the field. You know, Gennaro's playing on the other side. But yeah, Sean is a great player and a great guy. I see a lot of things that I had, just a lot of hunger to work. He's very hungry to compete. He's a good guy. He takes care of himself. So really from the first day on, we had a good relationship where we both want to play. Obviously, you know, it's a competitive field. Everyone wants to play, but also understanding that you can push each other, and it's going to help each other more in the long run. And I push every day because I know Sean is there. Sean pushes every day because I know I'm there, and it creates a good environment to improve and to improve everyone. And I think that's really what makes teams great at the end of the season is teams that have a lot of competition end up being the better teams because you push each other every day to improve and not really slack. So in that aspect, it's been great. I try to take Sean a little bit under my wing as well. Sean is a great guy. I know when he's obviously injured right now, but he's probably jumping to get back, and when he's back, I'm sure he'll do great. Yeah,
and you guys have somewhat of a similar background. I mean, he came out of Clemson, so he also played college soccer. He came out early as an underclassman versus doing all 4 years, but I think you guys have a very similar playing style as well, and you probably see, I mean, you said it, but you see a lot of yourself in him. And
he's probably more mature than I was at 20. I was a freshman, and I tell him sometimes where when things don't really go your way right away, or like you get hurt, I try to sometimes put my perspective and put myself in their shoes, where I'm saying, look, when I was 20 years old, I was a freshman in college, and I was not as mature as you are. You're taking really good care of yourself. You have a good head on your shoulders. So really to keep them, patient and ready for whenever chance comes their way. I think in that way it's been really enjoyable to work with Sean.
As you've worked your way back in as well, I mean, you've got 4 starts under your belt now. Did it take a bit to find the match sharpness again? Because you can train as much as you want, but playing games is a different beast.
Yeah. Well, the first game I played against was against Tulsa. I definitely felt like I missed some game sharpness. Fitness-wise, I felt like I was in a good spot. But it's very different than, game fitness, the game sharpness. It's certain situations that you have to think twice. Then, in another game, maybe you've been in a flow of a few games that it just happens naturally. We also played a different formation. I played as a wing back, which was a little bit more physically demanding to go up and down. I feel like as a right back, it's a little bit of different. It's a different formation, but at the end of the day, it's a pretty similar position. But then from there on, we went to a 4-back. I could play a right back spot where I'm a little bit more comfortable personally, and kind of went from there. Just trying to go day by day, help the team every game, because it's a long season. You've seen it before.
You mentioned playing against Joe Zhao and his pace, but I left him out of the conversation. But he did sub on in Sacramento as a right wing back. So I guess you are technically in competition with Joe as well, but technically only in those scenarios. Well, okay, this brings us to the present day. And now that you're available and you're fit and you're here in Las Vegas, talk me through kind of your goals, both individually and as a team, as you look at the rest of this 2025 season. Yeah,
well, obviously we want to win something. It's something that has been growing more and more on me every year. And every year you get 1 year older, and every year you realize more and more that every season really matters and every game really matters. So in that aspect, I'm just trying to win. I'm trying to win a title. I know it's possible. I've seen, many teams win this competition or this league, even if they are started as a 7 seed or 8 seed. I've seen 2 seeds, 1 seeds win. It's more about what can I do to help the team grow together to where it really, really matters when playoffs come around, that we're so close as a group that we can win through the competition. I feel like when playoffs roll around, it's the teams who are really connected the most that make it far, and the team that really has worked all year to fine-tune and be consistent, those are the teams I feel like that go far. So it's really trying from a day-to-day perspective to keep the team together, to keep everyone engaged, to drive the standard in training, to keep the locker room okay. So it's really the small things this year that I really feel that I can contribute to a team.
And then final question, I ask this to everyone at the end. So we've spent an hour plus here now talking through your career from 7 years old to now where you are as a veteran of this league. Talking about that journey and talking about each stop in detail. Is there anything that comes to mind for you that was a really formative experience as in your career or in your life that just jumps out?
You would say like in my career in USL?
Or just in general, like from Belgium coming through to here. Is there anything you look back on and go, oh man, that experience like really changed my life? Like the decision to come into US to play soccer, or my relationship with Johnny at Creighton, or my formation with Brugge. Like is there anything that really jumps out to you and go, man, I'm different now because of that experience?
I feel like there's a lot of small things that happen because I've been around so many places, and looking back, it's always easier to look back on them than when they actually happen. I feel like playing a Youth World Cup was a big one for me mentally, to really believe that I can become a professional. It was kind of like that first taste of, okay, like we're going in the right direction here. Then coming to the US was a big change. I think if I stayed in Belgium, I'm not sure if I would have been playing professional football, just because mentally I was kind of done with it at the time. And in that way, then coming to the US obviously was a big change for me, and obviously makes me sit here today, getting drafted and being the Mr. Relevant, the last pick of the draft. If that doesn't happen, maybe I'm not playing anymore. Small things, some things happen for a reason. I feel like if you try to do the right things and you stay on the path with integrity and trying to do the right thing, then things just seem to happen to fall your way more times than not. So I wouldn't say there's one definitive moment, but I could definitely go by stop and say like, oh, if this didn't happen, then we probably wouldn't be sitting here today.
Absolutely.
But I'm happy I am. So
yeah, and we're happy to have you here as well. And I'm really excited to see what you and the rest of the team are able to accomplish the rest of this year. Yeah. Excited to watch you play. So you guys can check out Younes and the rest of the team on this Saturday for Card Collector Night, taking on El Paso Locomotive FC. There's 1,000 packs of Lights trading cards for the first 1,000 fans in the stadium. So get here early, support the boys, see them catch a win against El Paso, and we'll see you next time.